Yes, sir. Please go ahead. We are live now.
Good morning, Namaskar, and Jai Hind. Once again, welcome to another edition of our program in the series Illness to Wellness, organized by SHM. Welcome to all of you once again. Today is a special day. Today is World Alzheimer's Day, and as we all know, that Alzheimer's is a disease which is associated with aging. Since past 2 years, we've been bringing about programs to create awareness about health issues, to enable us to have a longer, a better, a healthier life. And today, I think we thought it fit to associate these two topics together, Alzheimer's disease and aging. And we have brought out here with us on the podium in this webinar, we have some of the most eminent specialists in our country who are associated with managing diseases of the brain, one of which is obviously the Alzheimer's disease. And we have some people who are professionally associated and who've done a lot to improve the care of the elderly in our country. So I would once again like to welcome you all. While I was thinking of how am I going to start this webinar today, I was looking up for some shlokas which I love to do on such occasions. I couldn't agree more with one of these shlokas from Atharvaved, even though which we have used a number of times, but I'll once again recite it because this fits the occasion best. Paschem Sharda Shatam, Jivem Sharda Shatam, Buddhim Sharda Shatam, Lohim Sharda Shatam, Pushem Sharda Shatam, Bhavim Sharda Shatam, Bhuyem Sharda Shatam, and Bhuyasi Sharda Shatat. In essence, we pray to the Lord that we have a good life, we live for 100 years, we are able to use all our faculties for 100 years, that we can see, we can breathe, we can taste, we can enjoy life and have a good life in company of our friends, family, and companion. This is actually what life is about. But there comes aging. I personally say age is nothing but there are some biological processes going on inside our body. Our body is programmed in such a way that this process of senescence or aging, it is actually a natural process. It is programmed in our genes. In fact, it is a part of our life. The way we are born, we age. And in fact, the process of aging starts right from conception. And how are we going to age is programmed and determined at that time. Everything ages. We age microscopically. There's the cells also age, and a time comes when they die. They are programmed to die themselves. There is a process called apoptosis. So all this is part and parcel of aging. Now I would request Sri Anil Rajputji, who is the chairman of the CSR Council of SHM, to say a few words so that we can start the session. Anil Rajput, sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kesri. It's my proud privilege to welcome the galaxy of the experts who have come today at this program. Professor Rajendra K. Dhamija, Head of Neurology, K.D. Harding Medical College. Dr. Shamsher Dwivedi, Chairman, Neurosciences and Director of Clinical Services, Vimans. Dr. Suvarna Aladi, Professor of Neurology, National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. Shri Shailesh Mishra, Founder, A1, Snehanjali Assisted Living Elder Care Home. Dr. Ritu Rana, Head Mission, Health, Helpage India. Dr. Founder and Director, Total Care Control. Distinguished participants and friends. I think today's topic is one of the most exciting topic that I have seen in the recent past, which is graceful aging. And it is particularly significant because being held on a World Alzheimer's Day, a disease associated with aging. Over the next few minutes, I want to share two messages with you. The first is targeted to senior citizens. For them, I want to say, stop thinking about aging as something that weakens you. Think of it as something that makes you stronger. The second one is targeted to the youth, who form the majority of our nation's population. To them, I say, learn from Medleti. Everything that you are trying to do today. India's youngest nation in the world, and we keep talking about the demographic dividend that we have. There are several initiatives undertaken by the government to engage the youth in a fruitful and productive manner. But it is true that with the life expectancy of nearly 70 years, we will have a significant number of aged population in not too distant a future. There is, therefore, need to address this issue in a holistic manner so that we have healthy and happy India. The concept of aging is most often associated with nostalgia of the best years gone by. When you actually think about it, the best years that we refer to are the years when you had no time for yourself. You were planning every minute around your work, your children, and the future. Think about how that is different now. Your children are well settled. If you have planned your future well, then you don't have to keep thinking about the future uncertainties. Rather, just focus on the present and the positives. I want to share with you the concept of ikigai that has been coined by our Japanese friends, and one that imbibes in how I live life. According to this concept of ikigai, is what keeps us going. It is our reason for living. It is the coming together of our passion, mission, vocation, and profession. And this reason for living should not change at 20, at 40, at 60, or at 80 and beyond. The zest of life should not be limited by age, but enhanced by it. Remember, life can and should begin again as every year goes by, because there are always new things to learn and new experiences to create and share. For the youngsters, yes, you have the ability to take this nation to greater heights. While you are India's future potential, you have the opportunity to achieve superior goals by making use of the experience and wisdom of elders with what you think are the new and the cutting edge ideas. Together, we have to change this mindset of how we think about aging. For the elder citizens, they need to believe that their contribution to society are invaluable and that they themselves need to hold on to their passion for living. For the youngsters, you don't miss out of the opportunity of learning from those that have already tread the path you are trying to create with a greater vigor and vitality. This helps us to keep in mind and bodies of elderly engaged and active. And we know from the years of research how important a healthy mind and body is in keeping old age illness like dementia and Alzheimer at bay. Here I must quote the award-winning author Deepak Chopra when he says that you must find a place inside yourself where nothing is impossible. And the most creative act you will ever undertake is the act of creating yourself. Therefore, the elders can and must create themselves with unshakable belief and optimism for the future. The ongoing pandemic has encouraged people in all age groups, particularly the elderly, to invest in their physical health by eating better and exercising regularly. This not only reduces the risk of COVID, but also of other severe illnesses such as cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and many more. I explained the concept of Ikigai earlier. It is practiced for centurions that live a happy, long life of over 100 years. On World Alzheimer Day, I hope we can all find our Ikigai and learn from those who have mastered the art of living a happy, healthy, and engaged life. I see this as an opportunity to also invest in healthier minds by giving it a meaningful food for thought and exercising it regularly by continuing to use it for the purposeful activities. This can reduce risk of mental disease and disorder. Worldwide, 45 million people are living with dementia. In India, this number stands at over 5 million. Moreover, just a fraction of 5 million people with Alzheimer and dementia are diagnosed. This requires immediate intervention. And focus as this number is set to reach 7.6 million by 2030. We need to create awareness amongst the elderly to ensure that they remain engaged in contributing to the society and nation building, thereby keeping disease like Alzheimer's in check. In conclusion, I would like to read what Martin Ferguson once said. Of all the self-fulfilling prophecies in our culture, the assumption that aging means declining and poor health is probably the deadliest. We have a galaxy of experts for today's program of the topic and provide their valuable views, opinions, and suggestions. I look forward to an enlightening session and wish you all. Thank you. Jai Hind. Over to you, Dr. Kesri. You are on mute.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Sir Shri Anil Rajputji, for giving this forward onto our program and today's topic. And this was a wonderful discourse, especially about the Japanese centurions living so long and the enduring philosophy behind this. Thank you so much. Now I would like to take the program forwards and we would like to start discussion on this topic with an eminent galaxy of experts. They are very well known, so I'll just give a very short and brief introduction. We have with us Professor Dr. Rajinder K. Dhamija. He is the head of Neurology Department, Lady Hardinge Medical College, New Delhi. Dr. Shamsher Dwivedi, he's the chairman, Neurosciences and Director, Clinical Services, Women's Nayati Super Specialty Hospital, New Delhi. We have with us Dr. Suvarna Aladi, Professor of Neurology in National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. We have with us also Dr. Ritu Rana. She is heading the Mission Health, HelpAge India. And we have with us Sri Sailesh Mishra. He is the founder, president, Silver Innings Group, founder, A1 Snehanjali Assisted Living Elder Care Home. So we have a diverse panel today. And I'm sure that we are going to have a very interesting discussion. Now, since the theme today is World Alzheimer's Day, I would request Professor Rajinder K. Dhamija ji to say a few words about what is Alzheimer's disease so that our listeners understand that well. And I understand that he has a lot of publications about the cognitive impairment and dementia in India. So could you please elaborate on the extent of the problem in our country as well? Dr. Dhamija, sir.
Can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
So good morning to all of you, and thank you, Shri Anil Rajputji, Dr. K.C., Sandeep Jainji, and Taneja for inviting us on an annual celebration of World Alzheimer's Day, which we usually celebrate in our hospital, but due to pandemic, now we are on a virtual mode. So just to start the bell rolling, Professor Suvarna Aladi has many more publications than us, and her expertise is definitely bigger than us. We do a lot of cognitive related geriatric neurology. So I call myself as a geriatric neurologist, and I'm the chair of the geriatric neurology at Indian Academy of Neurology. So let me just quote Mark Twain in his twilight years. He said, "Of all the things I have lost, I miss my mind most." So important thing is that he still had the insight of losing the mental faculties, but he could still tell us that all the important things in life, your cognition still remains the most important thing to carry on your functions of life. So Alzheimer's Day is celebrated on 21st of September. A tribute to Alzheimer's who coined this term, and later on a galaxy of experts from UK and France, they had carried it on. So there is a difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So it's a progressive disease. Dementia is a syndrome of a collection of symptoms and many disorders in which Alzheimer's disease is one. So the many domains are affected, and depending upon which domain is primarily affected, we call it whether Alzheimer's disease or a dementia with Lewy bodies or vascular dementia or frontotemporal dementia. So also alluding to this. So I would just tell you the magnitude of the problem in context of global as well as our Indian position. So we have seen that the way the demographic changes are happening in our country with the increase in longevity, the life expectancy at the independence in 1947 was around 47, and now it is almost 70 or 71. So obviously we are going to have an aging population in near future.
I think the audio is lost. Dr. Dwivedi, could I request you to continue? I think we've lost contact with Professor Dhamija. Sorry. Dr. Shamsher Dwivedi, could I request you to elaborate on Alzheimer's disease?
So Dr. Dhamija was trying to emphasize that since we have improved longevity with better healthcare, And today we are with the average lifespan is around 70 or 72. So we would see more number of patients with geriatric problems. So I think Dr. Dhamija is again online. I think he can continue. Dr. Dhamija, please. Dr. Dhamija, can you?
Thank you. Thank you. So I was listening to Dr. Divjay. So definitely we are going to have many more people living with dementia, and as Shri Anil Rajputji alluded, 5 million to 7.5 million. I personally believe these are underreported numbers, and we are going to have many more in terms of huge numbers. So the public health policies need to be revised. We have the national program by the Government of India, which is a focus on mental health, cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. So obviously, the government is looking at, but the role of NGOs is also very important, and has been now coming in the mainstream. But what I want to say is how to diagnose early Alzheimer's disease, how to suspect it, and how to prevent it. These 2 points I want to focus on. And number one is that how to recognize it. So there is a benign forgetfulness where we all tend to forget our keys or purse or things like that. But that comes with the normal aging because the neurons cannot generate, though we eventually have to lose the neurons. As of now, there's no way we can replace them or transplant them. And that is something which happens with everyone. But when it affects your daily living, when there is a noticeable objective change in functional decline from the previous functioning capacity, then we call it as a mild cognitive impairments leading on to dementing illness, and so on and so forth. So the number one is declining functional capabilities. That is very important from the previous level of functioning. So these could be loss of memory, could be visuospatial. That means the direction or the loss of people going out and forgetting the ways even in the house. And then there's a problem with the language, whether it is semantic or it is the difficulty in finding words, and then behavioral problems. So all these are syndromes and cognitive domains, and majorly in Alzheimer's disease, the memory is affected, particularly with executive functions, as well as your planning and all these things. So these are the major things. What I need to enter also, focus also is how to prevent this. So there is a concept of cognitive fitness. So cognitive fitness is as equivalent to the physical fitness, whether we go for a brisk walking or aerobic. Cognitive fitness is your mental exercise. So we tend to have cognitive reserve and cognitive fitness. Cognitive fitness is very important, more important than your physical fitness. So how to improve your cognitive fitness is, I think that should be the carry home message from today's webinar. And that is learning new languages, trying to be active in.
Thank you. I think we've lost contact with Dr. Dhamija. Now, we understand that Alzheimer's disease has a lot to do with memory. And fortunately, today we have with us Professor Suvarna Aladi. Ma'am, I'd like to come to you and I would request you, because this is a very interesting topic, obviously together with, it is associated with aging, with the elderly, and obviously with the Alzheimer's disease. What is memory? What happens to memory in Alzheimer's disease? And are there other diseases also in which the memory is affected? Because we all keep losing memories, forgetting things. I also forgot where I've kept the keys of the car this morning. But how to differentiate? Would you please elaborate, ma'am?
Thank you very much, Rajesh, and for inviting me to this. I think that 10 years back, many people did not know what Alzheimer's disease was. So, but now a lot of people do know what it is. And so now we have people coming into the outpatient saying, I'm forgetful, so am I going to develop Alzheimer's disease? So I'd like to say one thing: to forget is normal. To forget is good. And we don't remember most of what we experience unless we pay attention to it. So when you talk about memory, it is something that we have paid attention to. And then after having paid attention to it, we have actually, integrated it into our system, encoded, we call it. And when the time is right, we're able to retrieve it. So this is memory, a process of encoding and storing it and retrieving it. And this function of memory can be affected by many processes. It's very normal to forget. And what happens with age? I think the most important thing is, do people lose memory with age? To some extent, yes. Even with normal age, ability to learn new things, ability to learn new complex things, mostly verbal written material, is definitely not as good as we were. A child can learn a new language in few months. It takes us years. So that's how we are wired. But the good news is that our wisdom is there, knowledge is there, experience is there. So there are a lot of other cognitive functions, maturity is there as we get older. So to forget is normal. So when do we say that somebody has memory loss and that is because of Alzheimer's disease? It's when they forget their daily activities. Say somebody has met somebody 3 days back, had a conversation with them, and then says, I don't remember meeting them. Or they have problems, they're finding their way back from their houses, from their offices. If they can't name common objects, if they can't remember certain of people they knew very well. So it's only when it impacts their day-to-day life that we call it dementia or Alzheimer's disease. In between, there is a stage, however, of some mild forgetfulness. And with age, that can actually sometimes increase your risk of developing dementia. So that we call mild cognitive impairment. At this stage, they're forgetting little more than normal, but not enough to call it dementia. The importance of recognizing this mild cognitive impairment where there is some mild memory loss is that you can do many things to protect your memory. So there are lots of activities you can do. You can, everybody's been quoting, we heard quotation from you from the Atharva Veda. We heard Martin Luther King, we heard. So I'll quote from Ramon, I just looked it up, Ramon Cajal. Every man, if he so desires, can sculpt his own brain. So we can actually sculpt our brain. That's called neuroplasticity. So by learning a new language, by learning to play a new instrument, by being the company of interesting people who have a lot to offer to us, by being engaged with some kind of leisure, complex leisure activities, we are actually changing our brains. And in the stage of mild cognitive impairment, even things like meditation, if you actually engage, then that mild memory loss can actually improve. There is still, however, going to be a small proportion of people where the memory loss is mild, but they may develop Alzheimer's disease over the years, and that is mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease. And today, the only way to actually pick that up is doing very advanced biomarker imaging, but it doesn't really, it doesn't predict when you will develop Alzheimer's disease. So you have to meet a doctor once in a year if you still think you're forgetful, and it will take many years before anything can happen that is worrisome, and majority of the times it's quite normal. And I think so mild memory loss is not something that we should really worry about.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. That was really very interesting and very enlightening. What I like about these sessions is that there's so much to learn from specialists like you. Dr. Devagis, I'd like to come over to you. Today, we are having two very interesting topics. I think Alzheimer's disease is obviously one interesting topic, and we are clubbing it with aging. Both of them are somehow related, even though not absolutely. So I would like to put up a question which I would say I have picked up from Rajput sir and from ma'am, what she was talking about. This one word, engaging, says a lot, I think. And from what I understand, that as we grow older, most of us, many of us might have some sort of mild cognitive impairment. So is it true that engagement in any of the social activities, professional activities, like ma'am said, learning a language or music or something, does that somehow change the outcome of aging process? or any of these neurodegenerative diseases. What is your opinion, sir? What would you suggest?
So, as Dr. Suvarna and Dr. Dhanija has, they have highlighted the importance of doing basically the activities that help in preventing dementia overall, not just Alzheimer's. Different kind of dementia is. We know that the number of brain cells are decreasing with each year that we live. But the remaining brain cells, if they keep making network with each other, if the networking keeps going on, then it compensates for the reduced number of neurons. And all these activities which Dr. Suvarna, Dr. Dhanija highlighted, basically when you do any new learning, whether you are learning an instrument, whether you are learning a sport, whether you are learning how to swim or how to use a bicycle, any new learning or playing a harmonium, any new learning, importance is new learning. If you are already a great mathematician and you keep doing mathematics, that doesn't mean that you are doing a great job for your brain. If you are a mathematician and if you start learning how to play a harmonium, that is what is new learning. So if you start doing new learning, then the remaining brain cells, they keep networking. And that helps to compensate for the reduced number of neurons that you have with each passing year. The other point which I want to highlight is that all the activities which would prevent aging will also prevent all types of dementia. This Alzheimer's is not a separate disorder as such. It is a part of aging. So if you take measures which will prevent aging, will also help in delaying or preventing Alzheimer's. Now, coming back to the third point, which is important, as Dr. Dhanija said, that there is a genetic factor. As you also said that there is a gene which is programmed to age. But there is a science which is known as epigenetics. How to modify your genetic response. In aging, they say that only 25% of the contribution is your genetic pool. If you have inherited good genes from your parents, then maybe that is a boon. But even if it is moderate or bad genes as far as aging is concerned, by lifestyle measures, you can apply epigenetics to your genome and delay aging. And there lies the research for geriatric medical care, this epigenetics of aging. And one thing which is very well known, which is useful across all aging disorders, is calorie restriction.
Right.
Calorie restriction is one thing which is of proven value in all disorders related to aging. And this is an epigenetic modification of your genome. The moment you restrict your calorie intake, there are genetic changes. The bad genes, they switch off, and the good genes, they switch on. And your aging process gets delayed. Now, coming to what is calorie restriction? Calorie restriction means there are various ways you can do it. The easiest way, which a professional can do it in his daily routine, restrict your feeding time to 8 hours. So give your body 16 hours of no feed. The moment you do it, the good genes, they switch on and the bad genes, they switch off. So besides learning new things, calorie restriction is other way of stopping all, and it actually is seen that in the cells there is something known as telomerase length, and that improvement the moment you start calorie restriction, and that is a marker of delaying aging. So this is one proven thing, but other things like exercise, obesity, they are also associated with worsening of age markers. So you have to look into exercise, reducing your obesity, reducing, maintaining your blood pressure levels within normal limits, as well as your blood sugar levels. These are all important. But calorie restriction will achieve everything. It improves your sugar, it improves your obesity, it improves your hypertension. So all this is improved with calorie restriction. So I would emphasize calorie restriction on this day so that it goes, people remember it. So two things: learn new hobbies and do calorie restriction and go for a 4-kilometer walk. 70% of your anti-aging measures are done.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very interesting and that was very invigorating. In fact, it has been proven in experiments also that as of yet, calorie restriction is the only proven measure of increasing aging. And it has been proven even in some Japanese studies also. Thank you so much for sharing this. But since we are at it, and it's a very, very interesting topic, and it's something in which we all think the future lies, I would like to ask the opinion of, this is a question to the panel, this is an open question to every one of you. What do you think of the new research in anti-aging research, as you were telling about the telomerase length, because there have been research in hyperbaric oxygenation, so that also is helps as an anti-aging measure, and there are some genetic related researches. There was recently a paper from China about the CAT7 gene, the switching off or knocking out of that gene. So what do you think is the future in medical therapies, the anti-aging therapies? Is there some future? Any one of you, sir or ma'am?
Yeah, Dr. Dhamija wants to reply.
So this is an exciting era of science these days, and I'm not sure whether how many people have heard of a new molecule being approved by FDA, ranibizumab. Recently, which became controversial also. So unless we have enough data, enough literature to support a newer intervention, I think time-tested techniques, time-tested therapies, time-tested preventive strategies are very, very crucial. Talking about the calorie restriction or the what we call intermittent fasting, when you have a period of fasting, so 12 to 14 hours, that is a proven strategy. Similarly, cognitive reserve or cognitive fitness is a proven strategy. Learning new language or a Sudoku or exercising your brain cells as you exercise physically, that is a proven strategy. Control of your lifestyle factors or lifestyle diseases like diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, all these are proven tested. So all these things, I think we should, what we have today in our hand, we should focus on that. If the science comes up with something, increasing longevity because of the drugs or because of the new intervention, that would be exciting. But as of today, I think the focus should be on lifestyle modification, your diet, your cognitive reserve or cognitive fitness, and being active even after you think that you are retired. But you never retire from your life. You do continue to do your functional activities, whether it is financial or otherwise. So my advice would be keep yourself active mentally as well as physically. 30 minutes of brisk walk 5 days a week minimum has been advocated since last 2 decades, which most of the people are not following, now following. But on top of that, cognitive fitness, I would again say, is very, very important for anti-aging.
Thank you, Dr. Dhamija. So, yes, sir. Yes, Shailesh.
Yeah. For me, I'm talking from experience on the ground. So I believe anti-aging is ageism. It is against the whole aging process. We can modify lifestyle. We can't modify the God-given thing. I think also we don't talk about anti-youth, anti-childhood. So why we talk about anti-aging? I think people anti-aging whole world is about beauty. I think old is beautiful. Old has wisdom. Old has experience. I think if we can divert that attention towards that, I think that's really good. And not on, of course, science is very good. Science can help us, but I think we should work on modifying good lifestyle, adding life to years. No, don't add years to my life, right? Thank you.
That was very true and so nice of you. And Dr. Ritu, I'd like to come to you. What do you think measures, we've talked a lot about diet, about exercise, lifestyle modification. Now, first of all, I'd request your opinion on what is the age which we should consider a person as elderly now already aging? Because not all the so-called aged people are so aged. I have seen some elderly. I mean, their working capacity maybe is much better than mine. They work for longer hours. They have more productive life, and they are moving around. So what, in your opinion, is actually when do we start aging?
Yes, Dr. Rajesh, I'd like to take from what Dr. Dhameja and Dr. Samsher has taken that. See, prevention. So when we talk about the prevention and health promotion is the key aspect here. So I'm not a neurologist, I'm a public health specialist. So I'll talk more about from that perspective and the meaningful engagement of the elderly. So it's not only the what exercises or what brain exercises or what are the things that you need to do. This is how the not only the elderly or the aging person has to decide or to look. The family, the society has to also engage them meaningfully. And here comes in, like you said, that when should we retire? We should not retire unless until we have that capacity to mental capacity or physical capacity to do whatever we like to do. Like we can retire from your office work. You can retire from your hospital work. You can retire from your looking the patients, but you cannot retire from your functions, for your abilities, for your mental health. So you maintain your intrinsic capacity, like increase your intrinsic capacity and functional ability to as much as possible. So no age is a retirement age unless the mind stops and mind retires. So keep engaging your mind and do the whatever activities you can do. Engage with the network, meet people, talk to your friends, watch something new, etc. New learning. So whatever you have decided in your young days, do because of the time constraint, financial constraint, or something. So in whatever you can start new learning now when you have that time, enough time to do. So everyone should think of that thing and start working on that aspect. So engaging the support of the family, the support of the society is something which is very crucial for Alzheimer's disease or anything, particularly about aging. So when we talk about the diet also, huh? So who will like the diet? So the person may not be remembering what to eat and what not to eat. Then again, the role of the family comes in. So all of these aspects, the family role is the crucial role. So that is where I come in, and that is where we say that geriatric health is something about the caregiving also. So how do the caregiver feels like that? So it's not and the person. So starting from the when we talk about the prevention, so before the aging, so we start those processes before the aging starts at the age of 45, 55, because if you start early, then only you can exercises those things and prevent your life into getting those deteriorated, which might come in whatever way it could be, right? So we cannot cure it very efficiently, but we can at least make it that thing that it is not deteriorating our health in and affecting our day-to-day activities to that extent that it is miserable to the person and miserable to the family or the society. So my thing is so Alzheimer's for me this is like something when it deteriorates, it's like death before the death. So please do not get into those aspects. What prevention is the best thing. So the road again, as all the neurologists have said, get into the healthy dieting, the exercising, the engagement activities. Though this is all about caregiving and engaging the elderly. So no age is a retirement.
Thank you. That was very interesting. And I would just like to quote Rajput sir, as he has mentioned earlier in his forward, that you should start planning your aging process. And he talked about the financial planning also, so that you plan your age well before. And I think this is what you meant now also, that at 45 years of age, if I understand you properly, we should start planning our health, our mental health, start some activities so that we are able to cope up with our aging process well. And I'd like to pick up a leaf from your conversation, your discourse, and I would like to move ahead to Dr. Rajendra Dhameja, because he's having a lot of experience in geriatric neurology. So, sir, you must be seeing. Are you there? So, yes.
Yes,
So
yes.
you must be seeing a lot of patients with cognitive problems, with dementia, and they must be coming with their families, just like Dr. Ritu was mentioning now. I'm sure that there must be a lot of distress in the families, in the immediate family members, when they see the very close relative people deteriorating mentally. Are they able to cope up? Do they need some special advice? What is your message to them? Dr.
Thank
Nija,
you.
sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rajesh, for asking this question and bringing this into the discussion. So, caregiver is also a part of that disease process. So, he has to look after a person whose mental faculties are deteriorating. So, there are behavioral problems in these patients. So, obviously, they will react, they will agitate, they will have difficulty in recognizing. So, the caregiver has to understand that this is not the patient who is doing deliberately. He is a patient, so that is why he has no insight. He doesn't know why he is doing it. So, the caregivers are taught not to react. So, if somebody is agitating or irritable, the caregiver has to be silent or patient just to ignore it, not to react to that. That if somebody is abusing you, but he's not abusing is deliberately, he's a patient. So obviously he doesn't know what he's doing. So one has to understand that this is a part of the disease. That change in behavior is a spectrum, part of the spectrum, whole spectrum. So obviously this leads to a burden on the caregivers. In our country, the caregiver concept is not very much developed. In Western countries like in Australia, where I worked for 5 years, the carers are paid by the government. So if you have your mother or your father having a dementia and you have to care for him, so you are paid for that. That means you're not able to go to your work. So that means the government is compensating that. So caregiver is paid by the government of that many countries to look after their parents or seniors. So that concept will come somehow. It's just a economics. Obviously, the government is aware of that. But having said that, the dementia alone costs around $150 billion in India. That is the cost calculated by many financial institutions, the care of looking after these patients. So it's a huge amount already. So on top of that, if you start thinking about caregiver payments, so it will be a little bit, it will take some time to go into that. But before that, the mental strains on the carers is also very important, which we have to look for, and giving them respite in between. So that is also something which we need to think about, that if somebody is looking after the patient with dementia for a long period of time, they also get, they also need to have some respite and recharge their batteries so that they can look after their parents or their patients quite effectively. So there are a lot of studies which have been done for caregiver burden in our country also, in people with dementia and people with other geriatric problems, degenerative problems, and it is huge, not only financial, but also physical, mental, economic strains on the caregivers. So all these family discussions, we need to address the concerns of the caregiver, teach them how to handle the outbursts, how to look after these patients who have behavioral problems. So that is also part of this Alzheimer's disease management, and we have to focus on that also. And thank you for bringing this into discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mira. Thank you so much for your views and your suggestions. Now I'd like to come to Shri Shaileji. See, as we started, and Dr. Mija and Dr. Dwivedi have already mentioned that the medical care and medical facilities in our country have vastly increased since independence. And the result of this is that the longevity has increased. It is almost 70 years now. So, which means more and more people are falling into the bracket of elderly and the aged. Are we ready to meet this challenge? Are we ready to take care of them? And how is this going to happen in our country?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for giving the opportunity. I would like to also, I've taken point from Anil Rajput sir, Dr. Samse, Dr. Dhameja, Dr. Suvarna, Rituji, and explained very well. They have laid a groundwork for me. But before going ahead, I think we also need to talk about aging. Somebody said aging is not lost youth, but new stage of opportunity. So is dementia. It's a new stage of opportunity. It's a new world. It's a new game. I think we all look forward to live in that stage. We can't deny. The whole problem is of denial. Uh, Earlier in India, the culture, still today, we respect elderly, we take care for them. But as we are moving ahead to urbanization, things are changing. Slowly, seniors are becoming burden. And when you suffer from mental illness, dementia, Alzheimer, or a disability, the person becomes, burden. I think here the problem comes where you are busy with your work, you want to achieve your career, you want to achieve your suddenly you have become materialistic. So seniors, dementia person are neglected. So it impacts not only the person who's suffering, it impacts the family members, as somebody said, the caregiver, the society, the community. It impacts the psychological, it has a psychological impact. It has the emotional impact. It affects the social side of the problem. It affects the finances of the family. It gives distress and the stress to the person who's taking care. So it has multi-level of effect on the person and the family. But what is happening is, as a country, I'm very frankly speaking, because as a country we are in denial that we are aging. We are still young country. 65 to 75% are young people. So there is a national plan of older person, but it is not implemented. So political party, the association, the industry need to recognize this. We have CSR, but CSR hardly anybody does anything for elder care. We talk about health, but dementia is never part of that healthcare. So I would like to mention about WHO. Recently, few days ago, has released global status. I think ASSOCHAM, all industry union, government should read this report. They have pointed on what is needed. As you said, what is needed now? We need primary health care. We need to have very supportive primary healthcare centers, hospital, clinics, which understand dementia, Alzheimer. The general physician, many general physicians don't know what is dementia, Alzheimer. So that is the problem. Then we need specialized care. So we need daycare centers, we need dementia home, we need assisted living care home. Nobody's heard about it. There are very few players. We are doing it. It's very troublesome. Nobody gives us funding. There is no training. There is no guidelines. There is nothing written about it. There is no module there. We need to talk about rehabilitation and also community. We can't neglect community. The society, the community needs to come into it. We can't tell government, okay, government needs to do something. Government needs to give me healthcare. No, it's a community responsibility also. So we need to train people who can take care of elderly, dementia person, the volunteer, long-term care. It's not short-term. We can keep an eye by, we can give some medicine and the person is okay. It's a long-term care. The person will survive from 5 to 15 years. Then we also need palliative care. Only Kerala is the state in India which has the palliative care policy. It works around it. If we have Indian national policy, I think that will help. Then how we should go ahead? What is the way forward? I think again WHO global status mentioned it. We need to have national plan for dementia. There are so many countries in the world which has national plan for dementia. Alzheimer's Society of India, ARDSA, has given the plan to government. Government is sitting on it. I think we all can. This is a time. Alzheimer's Day is a time to do advocacy for them. I think we have very strong leadership. I believe in the Prime Minister and the leadership that they will take it ahead. Then we need to have, somebody said, better diagnosis. If we treat and diagnose early, and there is a chance to work on it, because we are working on the ground. If we know the person is suffering or in mild cognitive stage, we can help the person and the family to take care of them. We need to do awareness. We need to do prevention. Prevention, lifestyle modification can be done from 40, 45. I can't tell somebody who's 60 to 70, now you modify your lifestyle. We can do relearning, somebody said. It's very nice, relearning. But we can train people, prevent dementia from 40s, not 60s and 70s. Then we need to have national caregiver policy. We need to support caregivers. We need to have armies of caregivers. In India, caregiver is not respected. People will do a pew job, they will go for call center, they will do mall job, but they will not go and clean somebody. So it's very pathetic work they think, and they are not respected. In US, Western country, they are respected. They are gerontologists, they are genetic caregivers. It is the second most sought job after IT, genetic care. I think your industry can take the lead from this. And we need to have improved information of healthcare of dementia. We need to have national registry for dementia. Now we're talking about 5%, 6%, 7%. There's an estimate. There is, let me tell you, there is no national survey, sample survey on dementia. How many people suffer with dementia? We need to have national registry. Then, of course, industry can do a lot of investment on research and development. Innovation. We have Ayurveda, we have Unani, you have homeopathic, you have Ayush therapy, you have music therapy, you have yoga. Can't this help dementia person? Can't it help in prevention? And also, when we are doing all these things, we need to have inclusive policy. We need to include people with dementia and caregiver in making policy and program. And that's the way I think it is forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shailesh Oshaji. That was really very insightful. So much information about the government policy of dementia and what can be done for the betterment of our fellows with dementia or with aging problems. Now I'd like to come to Suvarna ma'am, and I'd like to ask her, since I'm a diabetologist, we know that uncontrolled diabetes leads to mild cognitive impairment, and we understand that the outcome of Alzheimer's in patients with vascular disorders, now we consider diabetes also to be a vascular disorder. Other vascular disorders like coronary artery disease, which may result in heart attack or stroke, may be worse. So what would you say about that? Dr. Suvarna, are you there now? I think Dr. Suvarna. Dr. Dwivedi, sir, would you like to take this question, sir? About the vascular disorders and Alzheimer's and other mental cognitive dysfunction.
So there are various types of dementia. We try to avoid that because we want it to be more generalized in our suggestions so that the layperson can follow it. But since we have raised this question, diabetes is one of the risk factors for dementia. And uncontrolled diabetes on a short term, the patients who have diabetes, they would experience that whenever their blood sugar levels are very high, they have memory impairment, which can be corrected as soon as the blood sugar levels are brought down to the normal range. Now, this is one problem which happens with uncontrolled diabetes, and that is day-to-day fluctuation in memory performance can happen because of uncontrolled diabetes. But on a long-term basis, if the sugar levels are high and the person is not careful about it, then over a period of time, the arteries which supply blood to the brain, they get choked, they get blocked, and the blood perfusion or the blood supply to the brain gets affected. The way the blood supply to the heart gets affected, similarly, the brain's blood supply to the brain gets affected. And over a period of time, it leads to rapid loss of neuronal cells. As we all discussed that with aging, some degree of neuronal loss is going to happen. That gets expedited. So the brain volume gets reduced. The brain reserves are reduced. And such people are more prone to develop dementia later on in life. So controlling diabetes is not just, it not just improves the short-term memory, in the long term also, a better control of diabetes is useful to prevent dementia. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, that calorie restriction helps not just dementia per se, not just aging per se, it also helps in controlling other factors which expedite aging, like diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia. All this gets corrected with calorie restrictions. So अपनी जीभ पे control देना बहुत जरूरी है. और one line where Dr. Dhameja was saying something, he has explained it beautifully. Just one line for patients who have Alzheimer's. See, Alzheimer patients, they start losing cognition, but emotions are intact. So when you are saying something negative or when you are scolding a person who has dementia, he might not understand what you are saying, but your expression of anger is registered in the mind and they are in great pain. Don't think that they are insensitive. They have problem with understanding, but their understanding of emotional expression and anger is intact. And that is even more frustrating and painful for the patient, because the patient is getting that you are angry at the person. He's not understanding why you are angry, and that is a very painful feeling. So even with patients who are having dementia, you have to restrain your anger. And I remember 2 lines of the song. जो तुमको हो पसंद वही बात कहेंगे, तुम दिन को तो हम रात कहेंगे. And it is true. Many times they would say that अब चलो घर चलो, अब अंधेरा हो गया, रात हो गई. Instead of saying नहीं नहीं ये दिन है, it is daytime, it is better if you say कि yes, it is night and I have called the taxi, it will come after half an hour, then we will go, and he will be, the person would be calmed down. Instead of debating and getting angry at him that no, it is daytime, it is not night. Don't correct the person once a diagnosis of dementia has been made. That is very important.
Thank you, sir. That was really very important thing that you just shared. One more thing, sir. Is it true that the skills that they have learned over years remain intact? Like someone might still be able to play music or despite having Alzheimer's? Is it true?
Yes. So in Alzheimer's, as Dr. Dhamija mentioned initially, it all depends from which part of the brain the degeneration starts. So in Alzheimer's, music, I'm just giving a very simplistic answer to your question. Music is on the non-dominant brain, which is the right side of the brain, and the logical thinking is in the dominant brain, which is usually the left side of the brain. So many a times the logical brain starts degenerating, but the musical mind is still intact. And the moment you will sing a tune, the person will start singing. The moment I remember one patient, a patient of dementia, every morning we used to go for the round and say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, gino. The moment he improved a bit, because he had other medical complication, he would count till 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And at 13, he would stop. So we thought that there is an improvement in his cognition. But then we realized, उस समय गाना बहुत पॉपुलर था, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 तक है. 13 करूं दिन के इंतजार. So that musical mind got triggered and he would count till 13 and stop at 13. Because it was the non-dominant cerebral hemisphere which used to get triggered by our counting. And he would count till 13 and then stop. So what I want to emphasize is that the non-dominant cerebral hemisphere is still intact. The emotional mind is still intact. So you have to be very careful and sensitive when you are dealing with such patient. Otherwise, you will be causing a very intense agony within the patient. So your emotions have to be tender, loving care. It has to be tender. It has to be loving. It has to, and go with the flow. Patient says, दिन को रात का रात मान लो और उसकी कहानी बनाओ. Create a story around, weave a story around that his wrong perception, so that he doesn't get agitated. If you keep correcting the patient, he will become even more agitated. Then he will start thinking that these people are my enemies. Why are they correcting me all the time?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was very insightful, very interesting, and actually very helpful, because what we need the right guidance, obviously more for the caregivers, for the caretakers, and for the near and dear ones. So our patients with dementia need a lot of TLC, as you've just mentioned, and we need to have a lot of patience while being with them. Dr. Dhamija, sir, are you there? I'd like to ask a question to all of you panelists, and especially to you, sir, Dr. Dwivedi again. Is there any treatment whatsoever for Alzheimer's? Because it is, I think, considered to be the forte of neurology that once the disease has set in, nothing helps. Does something help?
So,
is there any future?
So in June 2021, a company named Biogen came with a monoclonal antibody and its name is aducanumab. It's the tongue twister, but it's a monoclonal antibody. And what it does is it is supposed to, in Alzheimer's disease, there's deposition of a bad protein named amyloid in the brain cells. And this monoclonal antibody is like a scavenger. It goes and cleans the protein from the brain. It hits the protein, which is an antibody against that protein. So it will cleanse the system of the. So in mild to moderate Alzheimer's, in early cases, if you give, it might be helpful. But there are a lot of controversies because it did not, like the way we had a rapid fast channel for the COVID vaccine. Similarly, for this drug also, FDA adopted a fast channel so that people are not deprived of this drug, because it will take another few years for the drug to get approved by the usual pathway. So they had a faster pathway because there are so many Alzheimer's patients in US, and so that nobody gets deprived, this was approved. Problem is that still it is in the patent and it is quite expensive. So whether an average Indian would be able to get this drug or not, that is questionable. But in mild to moderate, US FDA has approved this drug, which is a monoclonal antibody.
Thank you, sir. So probably we can expect some treatments as well for Alzheimer's disease in near future. I'd like to come over to you, Dr. Ritu. I'd like to ask you, are yoga and pranayam of any help in the elderly? And do you prescribe, and how do you look into it? The practices of yoga and pranayam.
So yoga and pranayam, yes, they can help because it's like releasing your stress and providing that relaxation to your mind, and which can stimulate your mind. Looking at all the degenerations it can be prevented. So I'm not saying that it is the sure shot, and I'm not a yoga therapist, but yes, it is one of the exercises and the preventive method that can help in getting all these disorders to prevent to some extent and improve your what you say the pressure you have in build up your mind, the stress level you have. So it is just a relaxing the technique, and it can improve. So as Dr. Dwivedi said, that there could be in the future, there could be some cure for the Alzheimer's, but till the time there is not sure cure, and we are just depending upon some of the drugs, and that can just like maintain the disease, and they can stop the progress for so far. So the diet, pranayam, yoga could be one of the exercises that can help out.
My question, yes,
Dr.
please.
Please. That as far as not Alzheimer's, but as far as the aging is concerned, it is known that that stress increases the level of cortisol in the blood, which is the stress hormone. And a short bout of anxiety, the way we have in exam or when we are going for some competition, that kind of cortisol hike does not cause any damage. But those who are chronically exposed to cortisol levels for a prolonged period of time, their aging is faster, and that has been proven even by telomerase length studies.
Yes.
Even since you are a diabetologist, even the blood sugar control goes ORI, the high blood pressure goes ORI.
Yes.
Now, one thing we know that by doing pranayam, you stimulate your parasympathetics. By when you are holding your expanding your lung, you are stimulating your parasympathetics and you are suppressing your sympathetics. So the moment sympathetic nervous system is suppressed, the cortisol level in the blood goes down. So indirectly, that is the connection between doing pranayam and preventing aging. But since it would require a double-blind placebo-controlled study, which is very difficult to do, so creating evidence, the kind of evidence medical science wants, will be very difficult, because it would require a very large number and somebody has to fund that study. And nobody will fund anything for yoga. It will be for a pill. For a tablet, they will be willing to pay because they can sell that tablet. But yoga can't be sold. So nobody will do this study. But the connection is that doing pranayam, doing yoga lowers your sympathetic drive and parasympathetic drive goes up, and that reduces the cortisol level. But we know that high cortisol level is associated with aging. So indirectly, that is an evidence that it might have a positive impact on the process of aging.
That is very true, sir. Thank you so much for elaborating this. Now, I'd like to come back to you, sir, once again, because you so beautifully explained all these things to our viewers and our listeners. And I'm sure that if you were to explain the importance of controlling blood pressure and cholesterol levels and how they affect the onset and progression of dementia, I'm sure our listeners are going to do a lot more for themselves and for their aging parents as well. So please elaborate a little bit in the simple, beautiful words as you've just done about other things. The importance of blood pressure, high blood pressure, and dyslipidemia.
Yes. So, blood pressure, as far as the blood pressure is concerned, Dr. Kesri, since you are also a diabetologist, you must be seeing blood pressure patients so often. There has been a controversy. What is the healthy blood pressure for a person? There has not been, and it has been fluctuating. Sometime it was 140 by less than 140 by 90, and sometime it has come down to less than 120 by 80. And there has been a controversy that this all is driven by pharmaceutical industries to bring down the blood pressure, because that would mean selling more pills. But I would say that as a general standard rule, you should keep the blood pressure low. I will come to the appropriate levels that is good for a patient, but I will just try to highlight the importance. The way diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes, cause hardening of your arteries, thickening of your arteries, chokes inside the arteries. Similarly, high blood pressure also makes the arteries very hard, very firm, and it gets choked from within, which makes it vulnerable for stroke, as well as on a long-term basis. Even if there is no sudden event like a stroke, the blood flow to the brain gets reduced, and that paucity or the less blood flow that the brain gets over a period of time expedites neuronal damage. Now, coming to what is the right blood pressure? We know that there is a unanimity that anything which is 140 by 90 or more is bad. There is a unanimity on it. Any value which is more than 140/90 or equal to 140/90 is considered abnormal. Now, different countries and different guidelines have slight bit of a difference, but I would say when you are bringing down the blood pressure below 140/90, my take on this is that there is no mathematical formula that this is the right blood pressure for this particular patient. Bring it down to the level where the person starts getting features of low blood pressure, which would mean the patient is feeling giddy all the time, the patient is getting blackouts all the time. So once you have reached that point, you know that this is not good for the patient. So you have to fine tune that value. It could be 120 or 130. Between 120 and 130 might be ideal for most of the patients, and the lower one between 70 to 80 might be ideal for most of the patients. So you have to aspire for that rather than going mathematically as per a guideline. So patient to patient, because if you bring down the blood pressure too low in a patient whose arteries are already choked, you will further reduce the blood flow to the brain. So you have to find the right value, and that is the job of a clinician. But one thing one should do is that those who can afford, they should have a blood pressure measuring instrument at home. And those who have high blood pressure, at least once or twice a week, the blood pressure should be checked by the gentleman or the family member, so that it is kept, and it goes a long way to reduce the disease burden in the society. Now, coming to dyslipidemia, lipids are, first understand, cholesterol is not always bad. Lipids are important for life. It is only the imbalance in the levels which cause problem. So we know that low cholesterol, very high total cholesterol can, again, these lipids, these fat particles, they get deposited inside the arteries, and again it promotes atherosclerosis, which is the process of choking of the arteries, which even high blood pressure and diabetes does. So high cholesterol in any case, cholesterol, total cholesterol should not be more than 200. That is for sure. It has to be kept below 200. And there is one cholesterol which is particularly bad, is the LDL cholesterol. We all know it's the bad cholesterol. That has to be kept below 100. That is also very sure. We are sure about it. The third cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, is the HDL cholesterol. And that improves if you take essential fatty acids in your food, which includes so now one thing I would like to emphasize here, we read so much about different phytonutrients which we feel is helpful in preventing aging, dementia, etc. But there could be an exotic material available in Japan. We don't have that. We have to have a diet chart which is customized to our food articles, our dietary style, and which is available easily in the country. We go for some exotic blueberries. Now people are searching blueberries all over the market where to get blueberries. There is no need to do that. So if you have to increase your good cholesterol, then you have to have essential fatty acids, which is easily available in traditionally we call it char magas, which is a combination of 4 seeds. So these 4 seeds, flex seeds, which is alsi ka beej, 4 seeds which are important source of essential fatty acids, badam and akhrot. If you have all this, you don't have to go for exotic food articles to improve your HDL cholesterol levels. Exercise again and calorie restriction helps all 3. It improves your lipid levels, it improves your blood pressure control, and I'm emphasizing calorie restriction because in Ayurveda there is a shlok that it is not that you eat the food, food eats you.
That's true.
Food eats you. You don't eat the food. So you have to be very careful about how much calorie you are taking, and reducing calorie will reduce blood sugar, will improve your cholesterol, and even improve your blood pressure. And if you do, and one thing which we have forgotten in all this discussion, which is sleep. Less than 6 hours of sleep is associated with increased risk of dementia and sudden death. More than 8 hours is also associated. So 6 to 8 hours is the band. You must get at least 6 hours, and you should not sleep more. If you are sleeping more than 8 hours, then there is some problem. You need to go and get, either you are having obstructive sleep apnea, either you are having uncontrolled diabetes or low vitamin B12 or thyroid levels are low, something is wrong. So 6 to 8 hours is the band which you must get, because during sleep, those who sleep less are also more prone to dementia later on in life. Because it is during sleep that the housekeeping of the brain happens. जैसे रात को malls बंद होकर के housekeeping होती है, वैसे ही brain की housekeeping रात को होती है. When you are sleeping, at that time there are channels which are known as glymphatic. They open up, and all the metabolites that you have generated throughout the day, that gets cleansed. If that is not happening regularly, then these metabolites are toxins for the nerve cells, and the nerve cells die. So sleep is very important. If I have to choose between 8 hours of sleep and exercise, sleeping is more important than exercise.
Thank you so much. So that was, yes.
If you are not sleeping and exercising, then it is double whammy. You are harming your body. After exercise, the tiredness which happens, you need to take sleep, otherwise you will cause more harm than good. So sleep is important part of preventing aging, preventing dementia, control of diabetes, control of high blood pressure, control of dyslipidemia, and for treating obesity. Those who don't sleep well are more prone to obesity. So
very true.
8 घंटे सोना है, कम खाना है, और 4 किलोमीटर चलना है. सारे काम पूरी ठीक रहेगी.
एक छोटी सी बात और sir, because elderly people have more of prostate problems. The question comes frequently to me that they have to get up twice or thrice in the night to go to the loo. I mean, and that is a disturbance in sleep. How does that affect?
It definitely affects. So those who have frequent urination, fortunately, when I was doing MBBS, all prostate patients, they landed up in the operation theater for surgery. The number of surgeries for prostate has reduced by 90% because of the modern medication. So you must tell this to your general, even a general physician can treat prostate today. There are such good drugs available. You take the medication and get rid of the problem. Why to live with that problem? And that will improve your quality of life. And since Dr. Rajesh is in diabetes practice, he must be getting a lot of patients with such a problem, and I think he knows how to treat it better than me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, because we have very little time, I would request each of our panelists to give a short message for our listeners about aging, about how to have a better life, a better elderly life. We'll start with you, Shailesh. You are there.
Yeah. So I think डॉक्टर शमशेर ने गाना गाया था, जो तुमको है पसंद वही हम बात करेंगे, दिन को रात कहेंगे तो रात कहेंगे. I think dementia के लिए what is important is of course there is medication. Love and care is the best treatment what we can have. I would like to end with the quote, a very nice quote in my book, Remember Me, I've written on dementia. I think we all also need to have vernacular dementia information. India is such a vast country, there are different languages. If you don't tell them what in their language, it would happen. बहुत अच्छा quote है. It is not other person's behavior that causes our reaction. It is not other person's behavior that causes a reaction. Instead, it is our judgment about their behavior that triggers their reaction. I think ये हमको ध्यान रखना है. हमारे जो बुजुर्ग हैं, जो डिमेंशिया अल्जाइमर के लोग हैं, उनका इज्जत करना है, उनको अपने जैसे उनको प्यार मोहब्बत से रखे. वो भी इंसान है. They are human beings. I think they डिमेंशिया हो गया तो ह्यूमन बीइंग नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है. बुजुर्ग हो गए तो इंसान नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है. उनको साथ में रखेंगे और हमारा समाज को एक अच्छा समाज बनाएंगे. थैंक यू
सो मच. डॉक्टर शमशेर सर, आपने इतना कुछ बताया है. आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट यू टू गिव अ शॉर्ट मैसेज एनीवे.
एक चीज जो अगेन पूरी बातचीत में थोड़ा सा कम एम्फेसाइज गई, वो ये कि जब आप रिटायर हो रहे हैं अपनी सरकारी नौकरी से, तो पहला काम ये, रिटायरमेंट अपने में एक डिजीज है. तो वर्ड रिटायरमेंट को खत्म कर देना चाहिए. आप रिटायर होना ही नहीं है. दूसरा, दोस्तों को छोड़ना नहीं है. Because it is now as known fact that those who are living alone are more likely to develop dementia than those who are socially active. So दोस्तों के बीच हंसना है, घूमना है, बातें करना है. और जैसे डॉक्टर मिस्टर राजपूत ने बताया कि फाइनेंशियल प्लानिंग इंपॉर्टेंट है, 50 के होते ही आप अपना समेटना शुरू कर दें. जो बहुत फैलाया हुआ है ना, यहाँ लैंड, यहाँ प्रॉपर्टी, यहाँ, उसको आप कंसोलिडेट करना शुरू कर दें. नहीं तो जब डिमेंशिया होगा ना, तो कौन प्रॉपर्टी और कौन कहाँ चली गई कुछ पता नहीं चलेगा. इसलिए अपनी टेंशन कम करने के लिए कंसोलिडेशन शुड स्टार्ट एट द एज ऑफ 50, एंड इन नेक्स्ट 10 years you should be in a position where at the click of a button you can get your money, rather than there is a land in Coimbatore, you are living in Delhi and you are trying to sell that off at the age of 75. वो नहीं करना है. वो स्ट्रेस, जो डेली का स्ट्रेस होगा ना, आपका कॉर्टिसोल लेवल बढ़ा के सब कुछ गड़बड़ कर देगा. कई जगह आप केस लड़ रहे होंगे अपनी जमीन पान. तो इसको कंसोलिडेशन करना है 50 years में. दोस्त, अपना सर्किल बना के रखना है. ये जो आप कहते हैं ना टाइम पास, एक्चुअली दैट इज बिकॉज मैन इज ए सोशल एनिमल. इसको सोशल इंटरेक्शन जरूरी है, शांति जरूरी है, लेकिन शांति दोस्तों के साथ बैठ के शांति एंजॉय कर सकते हैं आप. अकेले में अगर आपने शांति एंजॉय करना शुरू किया, देन द प्रोसेस ऑफ डिमेंशिया वुड बी फास्टर. तो ये हमारी खुराक है, सोशल इंटरेक्शन. दोस्त बना के रखो, क्लब में एक्टिव रहो, RWA में एक्टिव रहो. सोसाइटी को वापस देने का टाइम है, वो दो. वो तब कर पाओगे when you will consolidate after the age of 50, when you will have no stress, no cortisol level, everything is under control. So enjoy your life. Once you actually, अगर देखा जाए, then the job is itself a stress. So the best part of life starts once you are leaving your routine, mundane, monotonous routine job every day which you do. This is the time to enjoy, because you are financially independent, everything is sorted, And then you start doing what you want to do, travel, learning music, going for swimming. All this will improve your health and give you more fulfilling and pleasurable life than the life which you had for last 30 years, just doing monotonous activity every day. And at the end of the day, you just go and just lie on the bed.
That is so true. That is so true. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'd like to request Anil Rajput, sir, to give a vote of thanks to our esteemed panel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhamija, for sharing your idea on cognitive fitness, mental exercises. Dr. Savarna Aradi, to forget is normal. That's a lesson she gave us. An ability to learn new things and complex things, we should never kind of stop. This helps you going forward. And thanking Dr. Shamsher Dwivedi today is not enough. He has given us so many beautiful lessons, and they are not limited to only dementia. It is actually, related to looking after your health better, and really what it means to be a graceful aging, and dwells very well with our overall topic of illness to wellness, which means that you should not fall ill. That is the message that we always want to give to our people who join us on this program. And whether it is the 4 seeds that you should consume, and the kind of sleep, and yoga, and you name it, how you should give rest to your tummy. 16 hours you should give rest to your tummy. 8 hours is the time that you should spend eating and rest. I mean, not 8 hours continuously eating, but I mean that's the period which you are allowed to eat, and 4 hours of walking. And Dr. Rana also talked about caregiving, family's role. Dr. Shailesh talked about the problem of denial people have, and the mental illness that people have. They feel that the person who's got this illness is a burden. I mean, a great deal of sensitization needs to be done on this subject, and I think SHM should take this topic in educating people that somebody who's passing through this problem, how important it is for caregiver to understand how that patient is, what kind of issues that patient is going through, and what kind of psychological issues that caregiver is going through, and what we can do to make those people who are giving doing this caregiving psychologically, how can we make them strong? And one important point Dr. Shailesh had mentioned, that internationally, people who do this kind of job, they are very well respected. Whereas in our country, these people are not given the similar kind of respect, and that's why not many people are coming forward. And with the passing years, as we see that this problem is only going to grow in our country, we need to work with the policy makers to ensure that due recognition is given to such people who come forward to do this work, and what kind of support system that can be created for the people who will tomorrow be requiring this kind of care. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. We are really grateful to all of you. before I end, I will also end with a beautiful quote that George Bernard Shaw had once said, that you don't stop laughing when you grow old. You grow old when you stop laughing. So that's what George Bernard Shaw said. So keep laughing, keep enjoying. That's life. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.